It's time for This Week in Google. Is it possible to make a better Twitter? We'll talk to Dalton Caldwell, the creator of App.net. He just raised $700,000 to do just that. Twig is next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Google is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 159, recorded August 15th, 2012. Call me, Ariana. This Week in Google is brought to you by Stamps.com. Use Stamps.com to buy and print real U.S. postage the instant you need it right from your desk. For our special offer, visit Stamps.com, click the radio microphone, and use the promo code TWIG. And by Ford. Ford invites us tech geeks to join the conversation, submit ideas, and grab your Tech Geek badge at social.ford.com. It's time for Twig, This Week in Google, the show that covers the Google, the cloud, the Twitter, the whole thing. In fact, well, you'll see in a minute, we're going to talk about a brand new kind of response to Twitter. But before we do that, let me introduce our panelists, starting to my left, Gina Trapani of SmarterWord.org. Hey, Gina, good to have you.
What's up? Great to be here.
How's the meatballs?
Oh, good. I got meat on the batch.
I meant to send you an email. I want that recipe.
I'll send you the recipe.
I was craving Grandma Trapani's meatballs.
Nona Trapani.
Nona Trapani. Pardon me. How could I say Grandma? Also with us, Nona Jarvis. No.
Prematurely gray.
BuzzMachine.com. And the author of a great book called, first, What Would Google Do, which you should read that. But also the new book is Public Parts. And also with us, Kevin Marks from his backyard. Kevin currently works at Salesforce, but he's also the host of Tunnel Vision.
I don't believe it. We always see him at home.
Yeah, you don't
Does he
really
work there?
You don't really do anything.
I work from home, but yeah, Google has the same problem. When the Google thing that decides when you're at work and when you're at home, it thinks I work at the train station. I swipe up on here, it says distance to work, and it says work. And that's
a funny thing at Google now. It does kind of make these
you get that as well, yeah.
About where you think you're going.
It decides my work is the train station.
That's very funny. And, we talked a little bit about, I think, this on Twit, certainly, and I believe we talked a little bit about it last week on Twig. Dalton Caldwell, who is a very interesting fellow, started iMeme, then went on after selling iMeme to create PicPlease, which, unfortunately, a few months before this thing called Instagram came along, and is then pivoted into something called App.net, which was a marketing tool for people making apps, and has pivoted again to something very interesting. And it all started with a blog post. Let's welcome Dalton Caldwell for just the first segment of the show. Hi, Dalton.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me. It's pretty short notice, but here I am.
Yeah, like none at all.
Yeah,
we were talking about App.net, and we said, well, I wonder if Dalton's around.
I'm sitting here getting my slides ready for an Airbnb tech talk tonight.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. So how did this all start? It started with a blog post, I gather.
Yeah, so sorry about the sirens. I'm right next to a fire station. It'll pass in a second.
It's fine. We can hear you.
So it started with my blog post, What Twitter Could Have Been, which I wrote for my own purposes. It was not meant to start any project. It was not meant to be what it became. It was just it was 4 paragraphs that I threw together on a Sunday. And my point was that I didn't get Twitter for about 2 years at all as a user. And then one of my programmer friends explained to me that it was actually an API and that I shouldn't worry too much about what the UI does. I should think more about what you can build with the API. And that the second I got that, I became a huge fan of it and, completely changed my mind about what it was. And that over time, as they moved away from being the open API platform kind of company, I think that a lot of potential was lost. And that it's still a really great company and still a really cool company. And I admire what they're doing or what it's for, but there's a hole in the market that was created when they chose to kind of shut down the API, and that I really wish as a developer that this product existed. And my thesis is that if they would have stayed building kind of an open API company, the ecosystem would have been more powerful than what we currently have of the Facebook Open Graph ecosystem, which is arguably the largest social platform we have as developers right now.
You wrote in the blog post that, as you understood it, a hugely divisive internal debate occurred among Twitter employees. One camp wanted to build the business around their real-time API, in effect be a kind of a dial tone or a messaging system for the internet. In this scenario, Twitter would have turned into something like a real-time cloud API company. The other camp looked at Google's advertising model for inspiration, decided their own version of AdWords would be the right way to go, and obviously that second group won.
Yes.
And now Twitter's going to do a TV show. They've got ads. If you watched during the Olympics, I mean, it really has become an ad-supported system. But what's wrong with that, Dalton?
I mean, nothing's wrong with it. It's their prerogative to do so. And I think a lot of people misconstrue my critiques as that of saying that what they're doing is wrong, and they're bad, and they shouldn't be around. That is not the basis of my critiques. The basis of my critiques is that as an app developer, shutting down the ecosystem isn't great. And I would have been building more Twitter stuff myself if I had more confidence that the platform would have stayed stable, and that developers need a social platform to build on. We need this to build good software. And if Twitter's saying it can't be it, well, that's not great. That's too bad. We need to find something else. So
yeah, we envisioned, I think, a whole world of automatic Twitter bots doing everything from telling us, what's going on in the weather to what's going on in the World Series. I mean, just this whole thing of this messaging system. So you did a little pivot. You said, well, maybe I could use app.net, and you created, you set up a page, join.app.net.
Yeah.
What was your idea?
So the idea here was I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Again, to be transparent, I was weighing whether to sell the company and just go work at a big company, and I've been public about that. And I decided that I really
That was also a very good post.
Yeah, thank you. I decided
the Facebook post? Yeah, that was great.
I decided that I didn't really want to sell the company, and that it would be a shame to just go sell the company at this point in time. And that what I really wanted to do was just go for it and try to build the world that I want to see. And again, to be transparent with you guys, like, I had just come from Foo Camp, and that's Gina was there. We didn't talk, but I was hugely inspired by a lot of the sessions at Foo Camp about the open web and about some of the mistakes that were made when trying to build our social platforms. And so I kind of walked away from it with this idea that we all created the social web in the past 10 years. A lot of people that I was in the room at Foo Camp with helped create this stuff, and that it's not like we should just wipe up our hands and say it's all done. This is the best that it can be, and that actually there's a room for people to try new approaches, and that we shouldn't just give up and assume that we're stuck with what we're stuck with. And that was very much my mentality coming out of Foo Camp, and what inspired me to be crazy enough to do this. So that's what was going on in my head. Is like, do I really want to sell the company right now, or do I want to try to be as optimistic as possible and rethink the assumptions we've made about the social web?
Why did Evan Prodromou did Identica, which is now StatusNet, with kind of a similar idea: a free, open source, federated internet messaging system. You're not open in the sense that you're not open source. You're open in the sense the APIs are open, and the real key to this was that it would be a paid service.
That's correct. I mean, if you know my background, I fought the digital music industry for 10 years. And, if you Google me, you'll see that I got sued by the music industry and negotiated and settled and did licensing deals with the music industry. And that dealing with copyright and media companies was what most of my career thus far has been about. And my takeaway from that was that actually the people in the music industry are actually good people. And I think people don't give them enough credit that they are good people that want to do the right thing. It's just that the business models of the music industry are predicated on controlling content. And once you have a media business model that's predicated on controlling content, you're going to end up making choices that consistently lock down access to the content by third parties. And so in a paid services model, you are providing infrastructure that pushes bits through the service, and you're not really interested in trying to control them. You're not interested in trying to see what's inside the packets and manipulate what's inside them. You're just providing a service for your customer.
Kind of like Pinboard is doing, where I kind of like the idea of saying this is a business, and it's that old Metafilter meme. If you're not paying for it, you're the product. So the idea here is the product is the product. You get to do what you want with it.
There's a third model, though, isn't there, which was talked about after you released Dalton, of starting something that's truly open source out there and that's federated, and that no one controls it, no one owns it. Obviously, there's a cost problem there, but you start something like that's truly open. Or even like, for that matter, WordPress, that's on an open source platform, and then they build a commercial company upon it, and others can build a company upon it. So there's a third model there. Did you consider that model too?
Sure. Again, to be very honest, that is a totally valid model, and people have been working at it for a while. Some of the people I talked to at Food Camp were people that have been trying to build this. That's where I met the co-creator of PubSub Hubbub, and we spent a lot of time talking about it. And again, I want to make clear that I hope people build exactly those kinds of things. And I don't have this idea that we're going to be all things to all people and solve for everything. My model for this business is actually GitHub, where Git is open source and GPL'd, and anyone can use it and install it on their own server. But GitHub is a company, and it's a for-profit company. And it's actually really useful that it's operated as a hosting service. No one is forced to use GitHub that does not want to use GitHub. You can just run it on your service, on your own servers, excuse me. But if you choose to use GitHub, there's a lot of advantages of having this hosted service, of having them innovate on features, of having to not worry about keeping the site up, et cetera, et cetera. And similarly, Dropbox. Anyone could roll their own Dropbox using rsync, right? You would set up an AWS instance, set up rsync, download some code, and you could kind of roll your own Dropbox. And I'm sure a lot of people do so. But I think it's ultimately good, whether or not you use it or not, that a service like Dropbox exists, that company exists. And so that's kind of where I see this business fitting in the model, is that we are not going to be the solution for the things that Jeff just talked about. But I see this as a piece of the infrastructure that it's better to have exist than not. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm also curious to get you and Gina going at it, because I've quizzed Gina often. Every time that Twitter pulled back and said, no, developers, we want to do this now. And I said, how can you still develop with that in that environment? And Gina says, well, this is part of the risk, and so on and so forth. I won't speak for you, Gina, but I'd be curious to hear you two and your viewpoints on especially the Twitter ecosystem.
I have to say, I was pretty skeptical about app.net. I signed up as a developer. I didn't think it would get funded, and it did. So I'm really thrilled that Dalton is proving me wrong, because I was at the session, the open web session that he was at Food Camp, and I really believe in the principles behind app.net. As a developer, I always try to go to where the people are. And I guess my kind of question about whether or not something like this can succeed is, just getting, making the app accessible to everyone. Is part of that is making it free. That's why Facebook and Twitter, have gained critical mass. And there are kind of problems that get introduced when you have to, when people have to pay $50 a year to basically access something that they can get for free otherwise. So I'm kind of looking at it less from a principled standpoint, which I'm absolutely right with Dalton, to a kind of more practical kind of standpoint. Like as a developer, I certainly want to develop for app.net, but it's, you got to get the people. And now, again, I hope Dalton proves me wrong, gets a ton of people to do this. And also, so that aside, the other thing that I think about when I look at open protocols, I think about AIM. Like AOL had this instant messenger protocol, and it issued its own client, and then a lot of other people built a lot of other clients, and then there was Jabber, and then there was, ICQ or whatever, and now we all sort of run instant messenger clients, and I don't really know what protocol I'm talking to people over, right? I've just got all my buddies in a list. And so I'm wondering if
that's the sort of second version of it. I mean, the first version was when people were trying to reverse engineer, there was a huge fight. Microsoft and AOL were having protocol change fights.
Right.
Because Microsoft was trying to write an interoperating client, and AIM kept changing it. And one of the reasons that the Jabber protocol won out was because the people could build multi-clients for it. And eventually AIM, after AIM licensed it to Apple for iChat, they got a bit more relaxed about it.
So in this kind of situation, like an app.NET open protocol, are we envisioning that lots of different companies will be able to run app.NET type services, but they can all talk to one another?
Right.
Is that
exactly
the idea?
How do you preserve the openness and have a closed source?
Well, that's where the PubSub activity streams, etc. Status blob comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we've stated support for all of those. And again, because I was at Foo and I made friends with the co-creator of PubSub Hubbub, very, very familiar with the thinking behind these open standards. And I mean, the fact that I was even invited to Foo hopefully shows that I'm on Team Open Standards. And so my belief is that the back-end hosted infrastructure may or may not be open sourced in the future. I'm not going to promise it yet. And there's a bunch of reasons why GitHub itself isn't open source, meaning the code that they write. But at the very least, if the protocol is always open, there can be infinite implementations. And I'm fully aware that new implementations and competitive services, what we're doing, will be built. I say this in some of my blog posts, that this is not necessarily going to be a huge company, but that's okay, right?
So they'll all interoperate?
Well, that's what's interesting, I guess, because it uses standards. You don't need to federate. You're just an implementation of a standard. Is that right?
That is federation, as I understand.
That's a better way to do it, really.
If you do PubSub Hubbub right, then you end up with federation. And one of the reasons that it was very hard to get Twitter and Facebook to adopt that is that their worldview was they're the center of the world, and they didn't see federation as a goal. They look at the protocol and say this is inefficient for what we do.
And it may be, with all due respect, why StatusNet has not taken off, because although it's federatable, you have to run StatusNet on your server.
Yes, no, this is the problem Gina and I were talking about as well, where the challenge is getting stuff running on a server is hard. Mm-hmm. It's the same problem Gina has with the stuff that she's building.
Yep.
ThinkUp. Mm-hmm. And that's something we need to make that easier. There are things that make that a little easier, including Heroku, that the company I work for hosts, makes it easier to redeploy things, but it's still not trivial. And that is an issue. Being able to get stuff running in the cloud is still hard.
Sure. A
couple of analogies. So GitHub is slightly different because GitHub has a business model that is, if your stuff is public, it's free. If it's private, you have to pay. And that may be a model that would suit. In effect, that's what StatusNet has done. That they have a model that's very like that, which is if you want to do public stuff, they will host stuff for you. You can have the source. If you want to do an in-house activity stream, then they will sell you services to do that. So StatusNet is in some ways close to GitHub than you are. You have a different model that's more like a classic hosting model, I think.
So we should explain that. But what Dalton did was a Kickstarter-style fundraising drive that said if you want to be in app.net, you can join for $50. If you wanted to be a developer, you could join for $100. This is per year. And you said I could fund this myself, but I think it's better to see if there's interest. And you raised how much money, Dalton?
I think it closed at 12,000 and change backers and 803,000.
Holy cow!
I took a screenshot of it. It's posted up there. Can I talk about the free thing real quick?
Yes.
Is that
sure.
Okay? So, look. Do you remember what Twitter looked like the day it launched with the green goo logo?
Yes.
You guys remember that?
Yes.
So,
I didn't see it till a month or two later, but
you should look it up. It's pretty funny.
It's ugly as hell. I got it right here.
And it's missing an E.
Yeah, they spelled it differently. And an I.
The day Twitter launched, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
And what I want people to understand is that this is a long play.
Right.
And
Good for you. Good for you.
we want something that's sustainable financially in a short to medium term. And that's very important to us, because if we're not sustainable financially, then it'd be very difficult for me to state with a straight face that this is something dependable that people could build on, right? Like that kind of transparency is very important to me. Additionally, we don't want it to grow too big too fast, because we want to make sure we can scale the technology behind the service, right? The worst thing we could do is all of a sudden we start fail whaling all the time because we're overwhelmed with new users signing up and they're disappointed. Thirdly, one of the things that Dick Costello said on stage, as I recall, and I could try to find the quote back this up,
Twitter,
is, hey, if we were going to be an API company, we would have just launched with all third-party apps. I don't know. I think it was in the Fred Wilson post. I'll find a link to that. But his point was they were already so far along that the idea of maintaining third-party apps, it was too late in the game to put the toothpaste back in the tube. And
Fred earlier, just to remember 1 second, Fred earlier had said, when I complained about some Twitter functionality, he said, that's what the outside apps and developers are for, Jeff.
Yeah, too bad.
So
they're gone.
Think about what join.app.net is today is we're not trying to be all things to all people. We're not trying to appeal to all people. In my first blog post, I discussed the Paul Graham essay about how to start a new search engine. And his advice was not to build something that appeals to all people, rather build something that appeals to 10,000, he calls them hackers, but what he means is uber nerds, and not to worry about it being too nerdy, because if you can build something that's used by 10,000 uber nerds, you're going, that's the huge step forward to get towards something that would be Google scale. And so the way to think about what we're doing now vis-a-vis the pay model and vis-a-vis appealing to developers, et cetera, is that we're trying to get third-party developers to build on this as fast as possible. And in fact, we originally weren't going to build the website hosted at alpha.app.net at all. We basically had to do it to prove that this wasn't vaporware. And the goal is to nurture the third-party ecosystem, and a lot of the developers are in there, and they've already built, if you look at our GitHub page, they've already built 20 or 30 integrations in the past 7 days since our API has been open. That's the future of the company. Yeah, there you go. People are building half dozen iOS apps and Android apps and desktop.
It's really amazing. And this is very encouraging to see this kind of response.
Yeah, that is great.
So that's the future of the service. I would think of alpha.app.net as our reference implementation. And my intention is to just open source that sucker, put it on GitHub, and stop maintaining it at some point in the future, right? This is what our platform could do. It's not the service, right? So that's what we're doing, and I understand that a lot of non-technical people have trouble understanding that, and they see something like a paywall, and they're reading all these conspiracy theories into some sort of, I've read all sorts of interesting things here, but the idea is we're just trying to bootstrap a developer community, and this was the way to do it, and I think it's working based on that GitHub page. So I'm
Dalton,
psyched that this is working.
Do you? And I'm one of those not very bright people about this. So I want to get a sense of the long game that you have. In two ways. One, is this then, if 10,000 geeks use it, does this become a way to pressure the Twitters, to pressure the closed systems to act differently and to open up because they have to? And then the second question, a little more general, is if you look at the areas that kind of have worked in that pressure view, that Firefox isn't number one, doesn't have to be number one. It led to competition. It led to, I think, Chrome to an extent as well, and it led to a much more healthy ecosystem. Ditto for Apache taking away what was going to be Netscape's hegemony over server software, and so on and so on. So where do you see you fitting into the ecosystem? Where do you want to be in that? As we see other closed systems that we grade against, what's the right model that you would push others to do? And then in the end, what happens to the old closed system when there is this new pressure?
I mean, sure. My vision is that, again, I point to GitHub. It's a smallish company. I think they have 50 or 60 employees. It's very profitable. It seems like a really fun place to work at. They're not trying to be all things to all people. it's a smallish, growing, fun place to work. And the way my vision for this company is not that we're going to be building a new Facebook or building a new Twitter. I think that's not at all what I'm interested in doing. I just want to build a cool infrastructure company in the spirit of, building an ISP in the early 90s or a BBS in the 80s or something like that, right? This is an enabling technology, and I think history will judge how compelling or useful it was based on the ecosystem of what developers build on top of us, not on how rich we get or how many employees we have or what our valuation is.
Right. So what I'm asking is your influence on the ecosystem.
Oh, so I think that this will definitely have an impact. It already has in the press. It's clear that there's a lot of interesting PR games happening, and we'll see more and more. And so us kind of making these moves have changed the tone regarding how third-party app developers are being treated. And I really don't know what will change, and I think it does come down to financial incentives and business models. And so I'm not convinced that Facebook and Twitter are going to be able to radically change their stance towards third-party developers, because it's just not in their financial best interest to do so, and they have a fairly tight deadline to hit their financial numbers. So I don't know what they're going to do.
So, again, talking about the future, do you imagine then a world at which some point where you run a server, there are many, many clients that are interacting. You may not even run a client. You have a reference client. That's it. And then people pay you. And is it going to be $50 per user per year? Is that going to be?
So on the financial stuff, I really don't know. I'm going to talk about this at my tech talk tonight. We've tried to just make something sustainable off a small number of users. And as the service grows, then we have the freedom to do things like either freemium-esque things like Dropbox or GitHub. And again, I'm not promising those. I'm just saying that is certainly a doable option.
Right.
And the other thing that I'm going to experiment with that I blogged about is a third-party revenue share proposal where there's a mechanism by which the user's money flows through to third-party app developers, right? And so if you're a third-party app developer and you're building on top of app.net and you're adding value and you're creating utility for users through your software, that you're getting paid and that the economics are flowing through to you. Because again, I think that's what's great about the App Store and things like that. There's definitely downsides of it, but at the end of the day, you can make a lot of money if you build fantastic iOS software. And I think that, again, in my vision, third-party developers add the value to things like Twitter and Facebook, and so they should be getting paid. And it's a complete inversion of what we're seeing now, in my humble opinion.
And
it's true.
You've closed it off to developers at this point. You can't go and pay $50. I mean, $100 to be a developer at this point.
Oh, you can. Everyone can sign up. What happened is that in the last 48 hours of the campaign, the number of backers doubled. And so we have 6,000 alpha requests in our queue right now, and we're working through them. And again, to be transparent with you guys, we wanted to put in moderation tools, because if we just dump 6,000 new people in our tiny little alpha, it's going to get hairy really fast.
Yeah.
It's already happening. Yeah. And so we're not trying to do some kind of conspiracy to keep people out or something. It's just like...
Thank you for letting me in, Dalton. I'm very happy.
We're human. We're here. Here's our little office. I have 300 emails in my inbox. I have to speak in front of 300 people tonight. We want to get everybody in. We want everybody to be kind to each other. We want to build our moderation tools. We need to build our terms of service, which we're going to be sharing on GitHub to solicit feedback on. The way to think about this alpha is this is an alpha test to validate this is real, and to spark people's imaginations to start building integrations on top of it. And a couple of things on that is, like, in terms of novel integrations, we spend a lot of time on this one GitHub issue talking about private messaging. And I think it's the coolest thing ever. It's GitHub issue 33. And the idea there is you can have the infrastructure to do something like you could implement like a group text service like Beluga or GroupMe using the semantics in there. You could use it for turn-based games. You could use it to build something kind of like a Google Wave, we're trying to build in all these semantics to do things that look nothing like the Twitter UI, and that's part of the power of the API. But again, given Google Wave, one of my big takeaways was that they made their UI try to do too much.
Yeah.
So this is just as powerful of an API as Google Wave is, but we made a really dumb, simple, easy to understand UI to show it to people so that people don't get spun out on it. And again, people are freaking out because our UI looks too much like Twitter, but I think that kind of misses the point. That's just our attempt to make something that's easy to understand right out of the gate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a good approach. I have to say, I'm a lot more interested in developing for app.net now that I feel like I have the fuller story. I mean, the next 12 months or so you've got a bunch of people signed up and backing the project, and these are obviously people who were attracted to, the principles that you laid out in your video, and that are kind of dissatisfied with the way they were being treated if they were developers. So if anything, you've got a kind of fantastic developer salon of the sort of most elite early adopters going on, community-wise. And then you're going to have all these different apps getting built, which is great. I'm impressed with the amount of developer activity you've had already.
Yeah, thank you. This is the coolest thing that I've ever done.
It's really amazing when you hit something, it just takes off. The fact that you in just the last couple of days made your goal, it actually looked like you weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did, and I think the turning point was the alpha, and so maybe. If we wouldn't have shipped it.
Yeah, it's good you did.
There were downsides to shipping the alpha. One of the downsides was we couldn't guarantee usernames would be given, so there's username collisions, and so there's some folks unhappy with us that I understand. But otherwise, we would have to restrict all alpha invites to hit the end of the username claiming date. So there was definitely some downsides to shipping the alpha when we did, but at the end of the day, we called an audible, we did it, and I think that's what put us over the goal. And glad we did it.
Hey, thank you so much, Dalton. I know you want to get back to your slides. We're going to let you go.
And congratulations.
Dalton. Yeah, it's exciting, and I think a lot of people have no idea what you're talking about, but we get it, and so we're going to explain it. Join.app.net.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Great to talk to you. Thank you. On last minute, literally 30 seconds before the show began, we said, hey, what if we could get Dalton? And he was very kind to join us, even though he's on deadline. So maybe this is really one to go to Kevin Marks. A lot of people say, oh, it's just a gated community. It's a $50 Twitter clone. I don't get it. What's the point? Obviously, and that was one of the risks of creating alpha, creating this app.net alpha, is that it's concretized it. But it really isn't. It's about standards. So would you explain to me, PubSub, Hubbub, Kevin, why this is really open and not just Dalton's good idea?
Well, it remains to be seen if it is really open. That's Dalton said he's going to do that, and for now we can trust him to and hold him to that. And we're his customers, so he should be listening.
There's 12,000 people who will hold him to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's the difference. So this is the difference between something that is web-like, where there is an open standard, which means that anyone can build things that interoperate, and something that is owned by a whole company. And we seem to have been. Blogging was like this. Blogging ended up being something that was done by lots of companies in parallel, but interoperated because you're primarily publishing web pages. And then we had some other standards for moving things back and forth, RSS, Atom, and the various ways of sending comment stuff back and forth. So there was some infrastructure, but it wasn't owned by anyone. Lots of things that have been built since then do roughly the same thing, but add features that only work within that environment. Tumblr is one example. Tumblr has a lot of nice social features, but they're restricted to Tumblr. Twitter's another example. Twitter has the @mention stuff that works very nicely, but it only works inside Twitter. And so there's a chunk of standards that we're trying to do this in a distributed way. That some of which I worked on as part of the things that came out of Open Social, and some of these, and we have various implementations of these. But the challenge is always with any of these things that are mass usage, you tend to converge on one or two delivery places for them, if you like, and that's the sort of inherent tension.
That's due to the network effect. You want to be where all your friends are.
Right. And, the better answer is we have a protocol that actually makes things interoperate, but getting those built and actually doing that is more work than building one that just works within your site. And once you are one of these successful sites, your incentive is to do less of that.
Turn yourself into a silo.
Yes.
Which is what Twitter did.
Yeah.
So it remains to be seen what Dalton will do, but if he lives up to his commitments, then what he's done is seed something that would be a more open. But I think, I'm very concrete, and I think a lot of our listeners are concrete and are saying, well, but what site do I use? And how does and how does the stuff I put on that site have anything to do with anything on any other site?
Yeah, no, that's the problem is moving the stuff between sites and connecting them, and that's the piece that's still messy. But PubSub Hubbub is designed to do a distributed notification model, and it works so that you can post something, and then anyone who subscribes to that can receive the posts, whatever site they happen to be on, and that's built and it works. It's been running for a few years, but the challenge is still hooking those up. And the thing is, if you look at that from the point of view of Facebook or Twitter, it looks horribly inefficient because there are all these. You're basically sending an entire setup tear down for every post, and they're moving towards these streaming worldviews where they're coupling streams together. So from their headspace, doing that is inefficient, and they'd rather route it through their systems that are more efficient, and they have the volume, and they say, "Oh, you guys don't understand volume." You run into that kind of conversation. Another company that's a little bit like this is Echo. Echo, Chris Sard and Chris Lu. What they have built, it sounds like what Dalton was originally saying, which is an API backend that routes activity streams. And what they've been doing with that is using that for media companies to host conversations on their own sites, but actually couple them into the rest of the system. And they've been doing that fairly well. And so if you go to some of the TV companies, I don't know which TV companies they're using, and you use stuff on their site, you'll be having a conversation in their world, but it'll also be propagating out to your Facebook and Twitter. And that's something that but their back end is running on the activity streams protocol, and routing stuff back and forth that way. So there are examples of this pure API company, but their customers are other companies. What Dalton's trying to do is get customers that are individuals, and that's interesting. And I think Gina's, you want a similar issue, right, Gina, with the stuff you're trying to do?
Yeah, it's interesting. What I like about Dalton's approach, that this idea that you're starting very, very small so that you don't scale immediately and fail well everywhere. If you think about the way that Facebook started, it started on the Harvard campus, right? You couldn't get on Facebook unless you were at Harvard, and that's part of the reason why Facebook, got good early, and then they scaled. Then they went to other campuses, and then other campuses, and then it opened up to everyone. So I think that's a really kind of smart move on his part. I think the question. He's basing this idea as like he started this very small service with 12,000, kind of, let's say, elite developers who are rich enough to throw $50 or $100 at a social service that no one's on yet. So these are pretty privileged people with disposable income who are very deep into tech, let's just be honest. So he's starting it with that, and he's saying, okay, now I expect the developers are going to show up and build clients that are going to make the service. So he's basing it on this idea that developers made Twitter what it is. That's one of his premises,
and it's exactly the thing Twitter's turned its back on.
But it's a question. I don't know if I completely believe that developers made Twitter what it is today. I think that developers contributed a lot to Twitter and made some great clients, and developers listened to the way that users were using Twitter with @replies and hashtags, and implemented those features in their clients a lot faster than Twitter did, because Twitter was just struggling to stay up. But I don't know if we can argue that Twitter developers, kind of made Twitter what it is today. Is Miley Cyrus and Justin Bieber using Twitter?
That might be more important, yeah.
They drive a lot of the traffic, because of client developers. I'm not sure. So, Dalton's, he's making a bet. He's saying developers are going to show up. They're going to make such compelling clients that people are going to say, this is just better than my other options. I want to start using it. I want to see him do it. I want to see him succeed. But he's taking a huge risk, and I have a lot of respect for that.
Well, with all due respect, we're taking the risk.
Well, he's doing okay.
We put a lot of money into this.
He's hitting a pound of money. So.
Yeah, 12,000.
To be fair, he hasn't actually cashed all the checks yet. He's got a bunch of promises.
That's right. The money doesn't go into his account until you have an account, and so actually he's only got a small fraction of the total. And the reason I put in $100, Gina, is because for years I've said Twitter is not what it could have been. This exact thing. And it may end up being something like this has no really front-facing user interface. It may be that, Twitter could have empowered the Internet of Things as much as anything else, right?
Twitter could have been a lot of different things.
But once you have to be an ad-supported service, the Internet of Things is not good for you. It just uses bandwidth for no good reason.
Well, no, I don't know that I agree with that. I think that if you depend upon this service to bring you stuff, Google brings you now transit schedules. That's just kind of an internet of buses and things. But there's value to that. As long as there's value to that, as long as you're there reliably as a result and engaged in it, no, there's value.
But okay. And by the way, there's a big story about that as well, because there's a whole issue with these metropolitan transit services pulling back their data because they decided that they want their app. They don't want people.
This just happened in New Jersey with New Jersey Transit.
Yeah.
For a guy who had if you stand in line for a New Jersey Transit train, you never know what the track is, and there's this horrible cattle call. So he just got the predictable tracks beforehand, published that so you could go stand by the right track, and NJ Transit cut him off. And I'm going to give you his name in a second. And we're considering the NJ News Co-op is looking into whether there's legal help available because it's public information, by the way. But go ahead.
Yeah, but this is not the first time it's happened. It's one of the reasons that transit directions are missing from the Apple app. Is because these companies want to do their own app, even though it is public information. Taxpayers paid for it. But that's the world we live in, and I really think that that's what's interesting about what Dalton's saying. Even though he's a for-profit service, it's in service of the idea of a unmediated channel of creating. Now somebody's got to pay for it, so I don't mind paying for services. I used Pinboard as an example. It's a bookmarking service, and the amount that it costs to pay for a year of Pinboard depends on the number of users, and the more users, the less it costs because he's covering his costs. I think that's a good thing. I don't think
but Leo, he also, the argument is, and I still hold out hope for ad support because I have to, because that's how journalists are going to make money, and we're going to have more media, and how I want to keep things from going behind paywalls the whole world, so it becomes a real issue of whether people have access to content and services. So I don't think that, and Dalton never said this. Dalton made very clear that he never said, by charging it's pure, but some people try to argue that. I don't think that going to ad support necessarily, corrupts you or means that you can't do other things or you can't control. You're an example of it.
But there's a consequence. Oh, yes, but on media. There's a consequence to Twitter doing that, which is, you need to see our webpage or use our clients where the ads are presented. Otherwise, a third-party client is a bad idea because it takes all of our content without monetizing it.
Well, that's where Tumblr is going another route where David went away from advertising, but then now says that he's basically trying to take the lessons he has about people and how they operate and bring those same lessons to brands, and it's up to the brands to come up with compelling experiences people want to go to and actually do spread around, and he'll share that brilliance with them. And it's as in any ad, it's up to them to do it well or not. This idea that you're selling. This is a huge issue. The idea that you're selling audience, that media is about making content and selling audience, is what shifts. I just wrote a post about this today because the Knight Foundation has a great news challenge, and Gina should have gotten it last time, but that's another story. And their next version is mobile. At the same time, the New York Times has a new CEO who came from the BBC, no revenue experience. And Arthur Sulzberger, the head of the New York Times, says that they're going to go to mobile and social and whatever the third one was. Oh, video. So I see a danger in this idea of going to mobile because we in media will think, well, then all we're going to try to do is make content and sell audiences through a new pipe. And on this show I've argued a million times that Google's not about that. It's about generating signals about people and thus being able to serve them better. And that's what I think mobile is really about here. And in that process, you are going to serve merchants too. You're going to do it, but you're going to have to do it in new ways. And we can't assume that advertising operates as it did anymore than we can assume that content did.
Well, I just think they're different kinds of companies. I mean, an infrastructure company is not an advertising-supported company. I mean, we're not an infrastructure company, but I don't think that PG&E should be ad-supported. PG&E is our electric company in the state of California, I should explain. Con Ed should not be ad-supported. That doesn't make any sense.
Right, and Twitter really kind of straddled that, really you could have gone either way.
Yeah,
it could have
and
been a
they made
media
a
site.
choice.
It could have been a utility, right? They made a choice to go media.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Advertising.
not so much a
media.
choice. I mean, they tried different things, and that was the one that got some traction, I think.
Yes, I
Right.
think you're right.
They have tried bunch of different revenue models over the years. But I think the other thing that
But that's,
Twitter-
by the way, why I admire what Dalton's doing, because he said he's making the choice up front and saying we're going to monetize this and see if it goes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But I think the other thing about what's going on with Twitter at the moment is that they are trying to, weirdly, they're trying to move to the web. The Twitter that we grew up with, that we're familiar with, was primarily SMS based. That was its sort of design center originally, and everything that was added to that. They spent a long time retaining that aesthetic of it must be less than 140 characters. We can fit it into an SMS. We have mobile clients, but it's the SMS on your phone, and that was their worldview for a while. And it was the third parties that built richer clients that did a bit more.
Right.
And now they've said, no, actually, okay, we're going to embrace the webness of Twitter, and the SMS thing, we're going to de-emphasize that a bit, and therefore we need to build richer clients. So I can see how their mental evolution has been going. But that does mean that they're sort of in tension with their own, root, if you like. And I think to some extent the fact that Twitter works very well for celebrities was by accident, not by design.
No, but I think it influenced their decision.
Oh, of course, it influenced their decision.
Yeah.
Right. But this was the thing that it was clear that it was started out as a group messaging technique.
Right.
It was making SMSs better, having this message bus going on, and those of us who were using it in 2006 remember that. But it fairly quickly became clear that the asymmetric following model and the at replies being secondary was actually a strong feature for enabling conversation between people who have lots and lots of followers. And so you can have...
Also known as broadcasting.
No. But that's the point. It's not because... The thing is, you can have Mia Farrow bickering with Rupert Murdoch or whatever going on. Right. And you can follow both of them, and they can decide to follow each other and join back. Or you can have a set of... TV personalities who are talking to each other over Twitter that happen to be followed by thousands of people. But because of the structure of it, it actually is stable up to that level of fame. Whereas it's quite hard to do that with any other comment system. So they stabilized something that worked very well there, and therefore they're capitalizing on that. And we saw it through the Olympics. Suddenly all these people you never heard of were enormously famous because they were, ridiculously skilled and fast and whatever. And they were able to, keep using their Twitter accounts. And there was a certain amount of trolling going on in responses to that. But they were able to stay using it in that same way while competing in the most, intense athletic competition that they will ever see. And use that. And that's an example of that model suiting that world very well. And so there is an affinity between Twitter and mass media that was not there when they started, and has sort of had this sort of strange effect of, I got enormously grumpy that NBC weren't showing the Olympics opening ceremony live because I wanted to watch it with the Twitter stream. I wanted to see all the English people, the UK people I follow, talking about it. And joking about it and saying, "Oh, that was cool," and it suddenly made me want live television. And the company that's bought the monopoly on live television wasn't doing it,
right?
And that was just bizarre. So that there is that interesting synergy that's there, and and the Echo guys are exploring some of that as well. But that has sort of moved Twitter away from what it was when we started using it, and what the developers built a lot of the tools for originally. Which is the gap that Dalton has seen and moved into, I think, is saying, okay, we can have conversations with each other. And to some extent, it's what Plus is trying to do as well. Plus is saying, okay, there's a room for this talking to everyone, but there's also room for talking to subsets of people, and they're trying to explore that space too.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. There's actually Google news too, but I thought I think that's such an interesting story. I'm really glad we could cover it.
That was a good conversation. I'm glad we got to address that.
And I think that it's kind of ill understood. Maybe it's only developers that really get it. One more stupid question. Why not XMPP instead of PubSub Hubbub? Wouldn't that be better suited?
They're doing slightly different things.
Okay.
So PubSub Hubbub is designed with this publishing propagation model. XMPP is designed with a chat model. So there's more of an assumption of symmetry in XMPP. It's quite hard. Twitter did build XMPP support in early on. I was chatting to Rabble about this a couple of nights ago. And it was one of the things that gave them a big spike in users when you could pipe your tweets into your XMPP stuff. But they found that you hit tension in the way the protocol works because there is an assumption of symmetry. There is an assumption of I'm following you and you're following me and everything's going back and forth. That's sort of baked into the way you build XMPP.
So PubSub Hubbub is really more for a many-to-one kind of a conversation.
Whereas PubSub Hubbub is better suited to the asymmetric follow model.
Yeah. Got it. That was a good question. I didn't know. Shows you. I thought he was just going to say, "Oh, Leo, you're just so silly." They're two different things entirely.
No, that's a good question.
You can bridge them, and you can.
Yeah. No, you can use one to talk to the other. Obviously, yeah. I just
get Jeremy Miller on to explain that.
I thought they maybe were at different layers or something like that, but no, actually, it was germane. Let's talk about the post office. There's a one-to-one follow model, huh? Going back to Ben Franklin. It's the original XMPP. It is.
Standards that have remained the same for hundreds of years.
Absolutely. And it ain't free, baby. You got to pay for that, but that's okay because it's very cheap. Actually, if you think about what you get from the post office, somebody will hand deliver a physical item for as little as 45 cents anywhere in the United States. That's a great deal, right? You know what's not so fun is going to the post office to buy the postage and all that. That's why I love Stamps.com. It actually brings the modern age to this very cool thing that's the post office. If you use Stamps.com, you can use your computer and your printer to print postage. You can print it right on an envelope. You can send packages and letters of any size. There's no limit. Well, I mean, there's a physical limit. You can't send a house. But, there's that 13-ounce thing where you have to go. No, you don't have to worry about that. You can bring it. You don't have to bring it to the post office. The mail carrier will pick it up. You can even schedule free pickups with the post office. Post office loves Stamps.com. That's why they offer discounts you can't get at the post office. Up to 21% on express mail, up to 15% on priority mail. I'm a big fan. Stamps.com is awesome. In fact, we have 2 accounts here at the office because we do a lot of mailing. If you're an eBay seller or an Amazon seller, you'll really love it because it integrates into those systems beautifully. You even get a USB scale that tells you exactly what postage you need to put on the package or the envelope. I'll tell you what. Here's the thing. Try it. We've got a no-risk trial offer at Stamps.com. Go to Stamps.com. You're going to see an $80 deal. Don't do the $80 special offer. Click the microphone in the upper right-hand corner that says, "Heard about us on a podcast?" Type in Twig, and that $80 offer turns into a $110 offer, and you get a picture of me, which makes it even more valuable. You get the $55 in free postage. You get the free digital scale. You get the $5 supply kit. You get the 4-week trial. It is an amazing deal, $110 value. And all you do is pay shipping and handling for the scale, about $5. I want you to try it right now. If you're in the U.S., Stamps.com. Don't forget the promo code is TWIG for your special $110 bonus offer. Stamps.com. Kevin posted in the chat room while we were talking this article from TechCrunch. Google Maps now features schedules for more than 1 million transit stops worldwide. So I guess they're figuring out how to aggregate all of that. But isn't it the case, though, that a lot of these metropolitan regions are saying, hey, we want to keep this to ourselves?
Yes, there's definitely pushback on that. But the smarter ones are realizing, people can find out when our transit happens.
Whoa.
That's good.
They don't yell at us as much.
And they actually pay us money for that stuff. We have a revenue model on people getting on trains.
Let me mention the name of the one in New Jersey. It's called Clever Commute. So folks on this coast join in the cause that it's our information and they should be able to get it out.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's just absurd.
It's one of these things that you end up having to fight area by area because we've seen this. The big one in the UK was the Ordnance Survey mapping, And
Yes.
that was set up so that they have really, really great detailed maps of the entire UK. But at some point they decided this should be a business. And so they had the government mapping department trying to sell maps to companies at enormous amounts of money. And it took a while, but eventually, it took a while, and Google making the example of, well, mapping for free is useful. And then they flipped it. So I think they still have some very high-end mapping services, but broadly they have open access to all these great mapping resources, which means it's easy to find things. Good. So if you are gathering data for a public service, getting more users is good. But particularly for transit, this should be obvious. It should be obvious that if people can find out when your trains are, more of them will take them.
Duh. So Google changed its search algorithm, and it's an interesting. The EFF says Google has kowtowed to copyrights holders because there is now a pirate penalty. A penalty, by the way, which Google's own YouTube apparently escapes. If you have an inordinate number, and we don't know what the number is, of takedown requests. By the way, approved, whatever that means, takedown requests. Google will kind of not
verified, I think.
Verified, whatever that means. Valid. I think. No, I'm sorry. They used the word valid.
They used the word valid.
Whatever the hell that means.
I think it means not had counter notices filed against them.
Yeah. It's valid unless it's against us. Then it's not valid. What do you think of this? Is the EFF right that this pendulum is swinging too far into the rights holders? Or
on the other side, and I'm not sure I have a big opinion, but Lauren Weinstein says on Google Plus in a very good post, calm down. It's one factor. And indeed, as with spammers, do we really want it when you search for a movie and information on a movie, do you really want the first 20 sites to be nothing but torrent sites? Is that the legitimate content that you want there? So it's a factor that I think is probably in the interest of quality search. Now, the other end of it is, it's kowtowing to the entertainment industry and to copyright interests. But there is some level of copyright interest. I mean, I'm on the right side here, folks. But there is some level that says that I don't think that necessarily putting up torrents of current movies that are in the theater is cricket.
There are two things the EFF is worried about. One is the fact that it's kind of opaque. Google's not saying what a high number of takedown notices is. What is that? How does Google determine it, so forth? The other is, and I think this is also an issue, at least from our own experience on YouTube, the false positive issue.
Yeah.
It's not unusual for rights holder. For instance, the Mars Curiosity video was taken down for a day because Scripps Howard News Service asserted the rights to it. Even though, of course, they don't own the rights to it. NASA owns the rights to it.
Right. And something that happens to Twit all the time.
Happens to us all the time. And it's Brazilian companies. It's companies that I think are trying to game the system, frankly, trying to get their ads on our content. Now, that's on YouTube. And Google says they're not paying attention. This is not about YouTube. It's as if somebody says, I want to take that twit.tv down. Those guys are pirates. And so far, I don't think we've received any of those.
Well, I think my answer to this is the same as the answer to the 3 strikes thing, which is if you make 3 bogus 3 strikes notices, you get shut off the internet too.
Right.
So if these companies are sending bogus takedowns, they should be penalized in search results.
Yeah, let's take them off the internet.
If they take if they are generating non-valid DMCA requests, then penalize them too. That would be a sensible check and balance on this, and they're going to need that because the trouble is this is Gresham's law. This is as soon as you there's another name for it. I can't remember the name of it, but as soon as you use something as an indicator, it becomes invalid because people start gaming it.
Right.
So it used to be that the link graph that they generated page rank from was wonderful because people were making links because they cared. But now it's been contaminated by people making links for the sake of influencing page rank. It used to be that writing prose about a topical thing was a good signal and blogs before. Now there are machines and content farms and all kinds of nonsense, and Google has had to write special code to deal with the fact that 3/4 of the web is now robots trying to game them. So this will do the same thing. This will generate even more DMCA bots. It will taint the signal, and they will have to then add some second-order corrections to that to say, well, if you're actually someone who's trying to create a tainted signal, you should be penalized too. And if they were smart, they'd have announced that at the same time to try and stop people doing that.
Well,
but we've seen
maybe if they're doing it, maybe they're not doing it.
But you've seen this discussion of Danny Sullivan's been good about this, talking about backlinks. With the last two releases of the search update iteration, Panda and Penguin, I think, Google has been sending out notices saying your site has dodgy-looking backlinks to it. You will be penalized for this. And suddenly, the people who used to send you emails saying, please link to me, are now sending emails saying, please don't link to me. please remove your links from my site. You're damaging my SEO. So there's this sort of, for that one, they've said, okay, fine, we're going to try and squish this a bit. And, they're going to need to do this. The same thing is going to happen to this one in good time. We will now find all the firms that wrote DMCA takedown bots are going to be going around to everyone saying, well, take your competitors down. Why don't you do this? And some of them will fall for it. And, it'll cause more mess.
Google.
Yeah, I mean that was my big concern about it, is that you basically be able to copyright bomb instead of Google bomb. A site, you could copyright bomb them if you decide that if a rights holder decided that they had a vendetta with Twit.tv or Gawker or whatever, that they could just hammer them with notices, and then that would affect their rank. But the YouTube part of this was interesting to me, and I don't think I quite understood it. They were basically saying that sites that get large amounts of takedowns because they're user-generated content, like YouTube, wouldn't be penalized as badly. I didn't really understand.
They need to come up with a rule set that allows them to exclude YouTube, but not just make it a YouTube rule.
Well, they did. No, so Danny Sullivan with an update says, Google says, it's not just YouTube. Many popular sites will escape the pirate penalty, which doesn't reassure me in the least, because they're not saying.
And it also says, well, what about the unpopular sites who are trying to become popular?
Yeah, what if I'm not as popular as YouTube?
App.net isn't big enough yet to be a popular site.
This is completely missing the point, Google. Oh, good. They say, well, if you're popular, there's other reasons, that we count more than just the number of notices. We're not going to say what we count, but we count more than just the number of notices. So Facebook, IMDb, Tumblr, and Twitter, they should be fine.
Oh, great.
Well, I'm reassured. Thank you, Google. That makes me feel so much better.
I mean, this is one of 200 signals, right? Is it 200 signals per search result at this point? So,
yeah.
But yeah, I
don't want to be Chicken Little. We'll just wait and see what happens. But if suddenly Twit disappears from Google search, you'll know.
We know why.
Those Brazilians. Google buys Fromers. First they buy Zagat. Now they buy Fromers for $143 million. I think it was you, Jeff Jarvis, who tweeted, well, at least we know Google's a content company.
I didn't. Somebody else tweeted that, and they said the media company. And I'm not 100% sure about that, actually. They have content in those two forms now, but they have content and data in all kinds of forms. With bus schedules, all kinds of stuff that they're serving directly now. And the thing about the travel guide business, I used to work with Fodor's when my last employer owned Random House. And as soon as the net came along, man, it was a disastrous business.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as it happened. Now, I'm surprised that Fromers and Fodor's have stuck around, partly because nobody really got their act together to do really good alternative guides. And so there is some still value still in having a comprehensive list of top places, which is basically what those things give you. But as a business, people weren't buying books anymore, and they were getting so much information from the net that it became a bad business immediately. So for Google, it becomes a pretty easy thing to throw this in like Zagat's, and it's just another source of local data.
Right.
And it's only $143 million. I mean, really.
Yeah. That's nothing.
Nothing.
That's only 5 FTC fines. So.
Well, I mean, that's it's less than the cost to buy Foursquare. Not that Dennis would sell to them because he's tried that once and been burned. But so that there are things that are building this. There is Yelp, there is Foursquare, there are sites that are successfully building guidebook style data. So, but
I think there's room for something that is editorial as opposed to crowdsourced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what Fromers is. It's not what Zagat is, actually. Zagat is no different.
Zagat is crowdsourced, yeah.
Yeah, Zagat's no different than Yelp, really. I guess there's some editors collating those votes, but
not much.
Not much.
They pick the quotes.
Yeah.
So who's going to buy Michelin then?
Ooh, because then you get the valuable one
I signed
star.
the stars.
You get those stars.
I think Marissa will go for that one.
I think Marissa will get that at Yahoo, so she can go around to fancy restaurants and get.
Marissa did not take the Alibaba money and give it back to shareholders, pissing the market that day. But she's quite right. She now has money to spend on these things.
She is right.
Yeah.
Keep that money in house.
And apparently she just joined Flickr today. Did you see that?
Marissa just
Joined Flickr and doubled its staff.
Well,
doubled its staff.
Oh,
Smartest
really?
thing
Sean
do.
Bonner's going to be happy. That's
Because
awesome.
folks like us are going to say, "Oh, good, she likes us. She remembered us."
It was a very smart and probably very cheap thing to do.
Yeah.
They now have 2 employees.
From 5 to 10, it's
right, now
not
they
a
have
big deal.
No, I'm being mean. They have some very good people working on Flickr there.
And here is Marissa Meyer's photo stream.
What more do you need?
That's all you need, baby.
She's still using her Google portrait.
Is that
which
from
interesting.
Google? Uh-oh.
I'm pretty sure that's her Google exec portrait.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Maybe that. We just wonder.
It says this photo was taken 6 hours ago.
Yes,
I'm
that
gonna-
means uploaded.
I'm going to favorite it.
This is called not reading the EXIF data.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Oh, what's that? EXIF what? Huh? Wow, that's
So
great.
Dear Marissa Meyer actually worked.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay,
Yes,
so
Sean
we don't
Bonner,
actually
the
have
guy who did
confirmation
that.
of whether this is actually her and not somebody playing a game.
That's a good
Because
question.
she did post a bunch of good photos to Plus.
Right.
Oh, tons about
Of her ceiling and all that?
beautiful
Yeah.
ceiling. Yeah.
I'm going to add Marissa as a contact and just see if
So the question is, will Marissa use the Data Liberation Front
to get,
to
her
get those photos
pictures
out of Plus and onto
How
Flickr?
funny.
Google Takeout.
There we go. Google
Yeah.
Takeout to Flickr.
We designed it
Google,
for you.
Google should just do it for her, just to prove that that's the way they are.
All right. Who
The magnanimous
do,
move.
do I get to do plus Leo Laporte yet? No, I don't. So
I can't wait for that.
somebody, yeah, this is the new thing. And Kevin Marks, you pointed out this might break the internet.
Well, not quite, but I can see why they're doing this.
So let me explain what they're doing. They're vanity URLs. If you go to your Google Plus account, your URL is some goofy long number and digit that is, is kind of it's hard
a
to keep.
21-digit number, which is the decimal encoding of the internal ID. Yes.
I, for instance, am 101-261-243-95707-6319422. And that's a little hard to give out to people. So someday we will all be able to be plus Leo Laporte, plus Kevin Marks. So we'd be plus.google.com/plus Kevin Marks, except...
So the second plus is the plus symbol.
And it's often ignored by clients,
Well, no, it's
right?
not. It's not as it's ignored. The problem is that when you send a URL, a form into a URL from HTML, it turns the spaces into pluses.
Right.
Which means that there's a problem with using pluses elsewhere in the URLs because some of the libraries aren't smart enough to realize you need a question mark first before the plus is a space, and so you'll get some encoding issues.
So it's just
Now-
old libraries we have to worry
Well,
about.
no, Google's internal stuff will be fine, but sending URLs with pluses around
Right.
can be problematic. It's But I can see why they did that because it's not plus.google.com/whatever. It's google.com/plus symbol
Oh.
Toyota.
Oh.
So they're actually handing out pieces from the top level namespace, which is actually pretty. When I was there, to get anything in that namespace, you had to have a meeting with Marissa first.
Wow.
Oh, so everybody gets their own. Yeah, that's nice. So that plus is the signifier. This is a Google Plus user.
I can see how they've done that. Oh, except when I do that, it makes me sign in. That's kind of crappy.
Now, you Kevin Marks, are kind of grandfathered into Profiles since that was your product.
Well, no, not just me, but anyone else who signed up at that point. So Profiles, when we did
No, they took mine away, Kevin.
They didn't.
They did. Profiles.google.com gives me /Leo Laporte gives me a 404. They took mine away. I think they took people's away.
Oh.
So you are special.
I don't think it's... So
No, he hid his in a place they'll never find it because he knew this thing would
It's
come.
in the desk drawer. Go get it, Matt.
The best one is Paul. He's got the only 4-letter Gmail address. Paul Buckheit.
So if I go to
Joe does have a Gmail address less than 6 characters, but he's got one that's 4 characters.
Well, he invented Gmail. There's a certain advantage to doing that.
He wins at namespace.
Yeah. So is he going to be google.com/+Paul?
I don't know, but maybe not. So that's the thing. So when we set up profiles in the first place, we said we want namespaces. Having 21-digit numbers is crap.
Right.
And this was a huge internal fight. And the answer was, okay, but you can only use the Gmail namespace. Which, makes sense, because that's the namespace they actually actively manage, and they've got a really good mapping service that goes back and forth. But it means you're exposing your email address.
Oh, okay. So if I go to profiles.google.com/Laporte, that should work, because that's my Gmail. And it does. Okay. So that's my mistake. I was using my Google Plus name. Use your Gmail name.
Yes. So your Gmail, yeah, that works. So the thing that we set up there was the Gmail account, and the pushback was you're now leaking your email address. That's a terrible attack on privacy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's an email address. Get over it. And it's Gmail. It spam filters it. So that was the pushback.
And you did, I know, on the bottom of profiles, you used to be able to push a button that says, please go back to a 21-digit number.
Yes. And also, if you had a Google account that wasn't a Gmail account, so if you'd set it up with a different email address, you could then get yourself a piece of Gmail namespace and use that. And it would create a Gmail account for you in the background as well. So I've got my Kevin Marks at Mac.com Google account ended up with some really crappy thing because I was testing something internally. And it's now called, internal test Kevin Marks or something. I'm stuck in that crap.
That sounds painful, right now, Kevin. I've had those.
So right now, Toyota and some big brands, does Lady Gaga, who's going to get the Plus thing? Is it, they said initially...
They have said, basically they've declared a new namespace. This is a new namespace for Google, which is, they've been trying to get rid of these. YouTube had their own, Blogger had their own, Gmail had their own, and there were a bunch of others.
Well, Facebook's been you could do this on Facebook. You've always been able to.
But no, Facebook didn't have one for a long time. Then we all claimed it in one night.
Right. That's right.
But Google had a whole bunch of companies it bought that had different namespaces, and it was trying to consolidate them. And the answer at the time I was there was it goes into the Gmail namespace. So clearly they've done the internal fight to get themselves a new namespace, but now they're going to run into the same allocation problem that everyone does, which is all the other Kevin Markses want that namespace as well.
Right.
And, people want the 3-character one Matt enough to actually hack someone's computer and delete his Mac. Right. So there are issues around namespace allocation. And so they're about to set themselves up for a sort of big fight over namespace. And it'll take a while before they come up with a policy for that. And it was the same when Facebook went through this. Facebook did pre-reserve a bunch of brand-like namespace stuff beforehand. And there was some favorable treatment for employees, I think, because they seem to have got namespaces before anyone else could sign up. But then they said, okay, now we open the floodgates and everyone can sign up for anything.
Did you guys see this story about the Oatmeal? The Oatmeal did a comic making fun of Google Plus, saying that nobody leaves comments, and that you have to hand out these terrible long URLs. And the example URL was funny. I just put the TechCrunch story in the rundown. The joke URL in the comic was something like blurg ASDF meat pie donkey orgasm 93 poop. And so Google actually created that URL and redirects it now to the Oatmeal kind of in response.
Here it is, plus.google. Yeah, there it is. It's very long. And so now it goes to Matthew Inman's, who's the author
account
of the Oatmeal Google Plus account.
And then now this announcement that we're going to get pretty URLs. So I don't know. I give the Oatmeal all the credit.
Maybe
personally.
he thought it up. I like that.
Well, no, we've been bickering about this with Google Plus for at least
for a while.
Yeah. So they say everybody will get it at some point. Right now, big brands are getting it, and then it'll be verified Google Plusers, and then everybody gets to fisticuffs.
And the unwashed masses.
Yeah, and then, of course, somebody will have already taken all of the good names.
Right.
And you'll be Gina17894 once again.
But the thing is, they spent so long trying to stop you being,
I know! Ironic! 47. Yeah. Real names, until we have a namespace issue. Then
now we have a namespace issue. Oh, maybe you can use your handles in that bit. Maybe. I don't know yet. So there's probably some huge internal, giant fight over what that means and whether the one true Bix with an exclamation mark can have his handle again. Or
right. Here, hey, this is kind of nice. If you're a musician streaming concerts on Hangouts, there's now a studio mode that gives you very high quality audio, which is very cool. I think that's great.
Cool.
Yeah. So when you're setting up your Hangout, you could choose between voice or studio. And
Leo, have you seen Huffington Post's new video?
live.huffingtonpost.com.
They've really integrated Google Plus like crazy in it.
Oh, interesting. I should be watching them since they're doing kind of what we're doing, only they're doing it with news.
They're doing news with people sitting around in a little. I mean, maybe put it on now, see what's on. It's sitting around a little living room talking about movies or something, but then they have guests come in on the they have Cadillac as their not sponsor but partner.
I would rather have, to be honest, Ford. But okay. So there they are. This is what turned me off completely to it. So they've got a Hangout going in the back.
Example of someone that makes comments on our segments beforehand, and we can get you on. So I would encourage everyone to make comments, and hopefully we can get you on as a community member. But you say humans are visual creatures, and there is a science behind beauty. Beauty is more than.
I don't. I wonder if there's a market for this or not. Maybe there is.
I wonder too. I don't know. It's going 20. I think it's 24 hours.
It's not, because I went and but
not,
they're
okay.
reruns. It's very much like us, actually. They're probably doing something very similar, and I just wish Ariana had come to me because I could have made a deal on some old equipment. I have a TriCast in the basement, Ariana. You could have had very cheaply. But it is interesting how they're using Google Plus, and by the way, or Hangouts rather, and by the way, they're doing some branding on it as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder who they went to for this, but it's good.
There's also an anchor at KOMU by the University of Missouri, Sarah Hill, who does. She uses Google Hangouts on the air, and she actually has people talking to her through her IFB from the public. And she doesn't mind it, and she gets
interesting
stuff.
Wow.
And so
you do
there
that broadcast news thing. Yes.
Chad, can we set that up so that the chat room could talk to me at any time?
Just right in your ear. Just all the time.
What? You know, that only works because nobody's watching.
I don't know how she does it. She's wonderful. She really does all kinds of great stuff. And she has a post up from a technical person who went through all the technology stuff that they did to make this operate, to get the air as a feed into the Google Plus and yada, 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 yada. But it's kind of interesting to see how Google Plus Hangouts are being used now by media in some interesting ways.
And it's interesting because they're switching it like TV. They're going second, then boom. I could see a director switching this. Look at this. They're switching really fast back and forth. And they're doing the same thing, Chad, that we do. You see there's a Huffington Post window in there. We do is we sign on. See that black screen there? They sign on as a kind of an account on the Hangout. And that's how they're able to get the feed.
Yeah, they don't have now. They're not giving program to their users, so the users would either have to have the stream. Anyway, this is all technical stuff that I geek out about. But.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Again, Ariana, call me.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of them turning up the audio quality on Hangouts and just saying prioritize audio because
isn't that great?
You know, you still need and now export it for me as an MP3. Would you nicely? You know, that's the piece that YouTube is crap at, but. That's valuable for doing these kinds of things. Certainly would help us, get Tumblevision going again if that production process was a bit more streamlined.
Right. That'd be a perfect, by the way, technology for Tumblevision.
Yeah, I'm eager and play with that and see if we can get Tumblevision back on the air.
Yeah. I didn't realize it was off the air. Tumblevision.tv.
We're taking a break.
Hiatus.
We're on a hiatus because we lost our producer. And me being the producer didn't actually work because nothing ever got posted. So we need to work out a way to get it posted. So if you want to be a producer, call me.
I like it that they have found new Egyptian pyramids, perhaps thanks to Google Earth. And this is Google Earth satellite. I didn't know Google owned a satellite. I thought they were buying images from other companies.
Yeah, aren't they?
No, they put some money into one satellite. They actually own it completely.
Yeah.
It
says, according to a Google
overhead
Earth,
watching you.
Yeah, they're watching you.
In the sky.
Located about 99.
It's probably cheaper than driving all those cars.
It stays over Germany all day.
It's really interesting. I mean, they actually, I don't know who was looking at the pictures, but
So was this verified? These were definitely pyramids
No,
that they didn't.
Possibilities that it wouldn't be it. So there's some doubt, but who knows?
it's pretty man-made looking, and it is just 12 miles from Abu Sidum, which is another site. So it's in the right spot to do it. I think but although it's quite large, so it might in fact be a significant find. Kind of cool.
Amazing.
Isn't that? And that looks pretty man-made. Either that,
Yeah.
it's the Mars Curiosity crane that just got a little off track. I don't know. Anyway, cool. Here's another one. Man etches name in sand, visible from space. The world's largest graffiti by Hamad. Just off the coast of Abu Dhabi.
It's also a canal.
Yes, it's an artificial
That's cool.
waterway. He's a 63-year-old billionaire, Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan, who has enough money to carve his name into the sand.
Or pay someone to do it for him.
Well, I doubt he did it himself. He's 63 for crying out loud. Yes, you know that. You know what that means, Jeff. You got to pee every hour. No time to carve. Let's see. SkyDrive for Android coming in just a few weeks. Rim says BlackBerry 10 is available for licensing. Anybody want it?
Bueller?
Anyone? BlackBerry 10? Anyone?
It's like, what?
Cheap? Anyone? Computer science at Khan Academy. We talked about this on Security Now. Khan Academy is going to do a school kid computer science class, which is great.
Has anybody figured out Ev Williams and Biz Stone's Medium?
Here it is. Welcome to Medium. We're rethinking publishing and building a new platform from scratch. These are the guys who founded Twitter. Ev Williams.
And Blogger. Ev before
Blogger. Yep. So this may be more like Blogger than Twitter, right?
No, I can't quite figure it out. But basically, how did Dave Weiner put it? You contribute to a collection. So you're not really publishing on your own. There's a discussion going
like
on. You
Pinterest.
Contribute to that.
So
well,
it's not
Pinterest
it's
with
not,
text and other things.
Yes. It's not time-centric and it's not author-centric. It is vague topic-centric. So in some ways, it's closer to being a wiki model, except that you get multiple entries on a given topic.
Here's an
I
example.
haven't got editability yet, so I'm only able to like things. And it's also massively non-browsable, which is weird. And I asked Ev about this on Twitter, and he said, oh, yeah, we could use Twitter for that for now. But it's actually quite hard to find things unless you get a URL from outside. And the way if you embed a link in it that goes through some redirector that doesn't work very well, so Google can't crawl it very well either. So it's this sort of weird thing of its own that is also not very discoverable or browsable.
Which is
interesting.
Here's an example page. This happened to me. Life Made of Stories. Kevin Rose has posted a little story on here about peeing with Al Gore. So there you go. That's what you're
raising the tone as ever.
Yeah.
What I do think is there's another new company called, I think, Sponge. Or it's a weird name. Craig Silverman, who does Regret the Error, who's a wonderful, wonderful guy, Canadian, redundant now, who started a new platform that I saw that some media companies are going to start to use, where it's a collaboration platform. And it occurred to me as I was talking to them that I think that this is a little bit what Ev's saying, I think, is that blogging became a chance for individuals to finally speak. And I think there's a layer above that organizes collaboration on creation.
Actually, look
in
at this.
Other ways.
This is a photo page that they use as an example. This kind of makes sense. And I can almost see this taking off. This is when I was a kid, things were different. And you post a picture of when you were a kid. When I was a kid, I read the manual. When I was a kid, we played with electronic kits, not computers. When I was a kid, it was okay to wear this shirt. I could see people doing this.
I mean, blogging's been around for more than a decade. It's time to rethink what this is. There's another one. Jonathan Harris did Cowbird as a storytelling platform that was used by National Geographic for a big project. So I think it is time to rethink this whole notion of how we publish.
This is really interesting. It seems very ephemeral.
Yeah.
Especially since it's not searchable. It's not it's not linkable.
Twitter wasn't at first either.
Yeah.
But it also has upvotes in it. So the point is that each of these sub-pages has a upvote on it.
It has a vote.
Yeah, this is good.
This is good. This is shiny. Got it. They've got a varied number of phrases there.
Good one.
And you have to auth with Twitter to do that. And then by default, they organize the categories by most voted on. You can actually reorganize them by new. There's a little interesting versus new click at the top, but it's not sticky. So every time you pop back, it goes back to interesting again.
I just signed in. I just authorized it with the wrong account. I have an account called Wasted Leo. and I have now authenticated.
Excellent.
This is not good. Well, I thought there may come a time when I'd like to post drunk. And,
well, you can post about urinating with Al Gore as well.
This might.
Well, wasted.
Yeah.
We need to follow that now. It's got no followers.
No, I think everybody should follow Wasted Leo. You'll know it from the profile pic. And go ahead, you can show it.
Leo, have you stood next to anyone famous at a urinal?
I think Gina Davis, but I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. I had Forrest Tucker from F Troop.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Well, that was a good topic. Yeah.
So the rules page of Medium says there aren't many. In fact, they can pretty much all be summed up thusly. Don't pee in the pool.
There you go. That's
so
good.
you have a pee in urinals, but not in pools. It's very focused.
We're going to take a break, come back with our tip tool and number of the week. We've got coming up very quickly, triangulation in just 3 minutes. And that's exciting because it's going to be Phil Lieben of Evernote, the CEO and founder of Evernote, which is a really interesting freemium model. A very smart guy with lots of interesting things to say. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about our friends at the Ford Motor Company. Here's another news site, social.ford.com. I find it really interesting to watch this company, more than 100-year-old, century-old company, march into the 21st century. They've done it with their cars and the technology in their cars. This is a social site around Ford, and they're doing badges, which is kind of interesting. In fact, you can get a Tech Geek badge while you're here. They have I'll probably get the Mustang badge because, you know, I'm a mustache. But there is the Tech Geek badge. See that? Great outdoors, off-road, flex, iDrive one. This is smart. There's also an interesting article by a fella you might know. Here's the idea. There's articles on Ford Social, social.ford.com, about all sorts of things. But there's also a chance for you to post your ideas. Here's an article that I wrote for them about an interview I did with one of their technologists. We talked a lot about autonomous vehicles and so forth. But if you have an idea for a way Ford could make their cars better, you can also post there. There's some really interesting stuff in here. You read my article because I talk a little bit about the GPS, some of the autonomous stuff like lane departure warnings that they're putting in there. What Ford calls workload information management. This is an interesting, although controversial idea. The car is paying attention to the conditions. If it's like rainy or the road's slick or whatever, it will actually shut down some of the things that you can do in the car, in effect saying pay attention. And I think it's a great idea, but a little controversial. You can read about it and cast your vote. Lots of interesting ideas here. Weight sensors to keep an alarm to sound if there's somebody sitting in the seat and it's too hot. There's some really interesting Wi-Fi music sharing between cards. A 15-year-old submitted a biodiesel hybrid post. Social.ford.com. Get in there, grab your Tech Geek badge, and read that post that I wrote about Jim Buchkowski. It was a very interesting conversation we had about how Ford wants to use the cloud, for instance, to sync your car or your vehicle to your home or office. Social.ford.com. Gina Trapani, it is time for your tip of the week, and I know you're happy about this one.
For those of us with multiple Google accounts, and that's all of us here on this panel and probably lots of our listeners, Google's launched a new sign-in page, which is an account chooser. You have to enable this, by the way, but once you enable it, you associate all the different Google accounts that you control. And when you go to the sign-in page, it's once you have it enabled, it's accounts.google.com/account chooser. It shows you a list, and you launch whichever account you want to go into from the list. So simple little tweak, but definitely handy for those of us who have multiple accounts.
And where do I enable that? Because here it is. Right on the front page. You can improve your Google experience by connecting your accounts. No, that's from other services. Where do I?
If you go to accounts.google.com/account chooser, does it?
Let's try that.
Let's see if you can enable it there. I clicked on a link from Lifehacker, which I'll add to the show notes.
No, account chooser, maybe account singular chooser.
Yeah, so there you go. So you add an account. You add an account that you want to add to your list, and then it'll show you that list of accounts you've added and say select.
This is so great. I have about 10 Gmail accounts. This will be very, very handy.
Yeah, to be a better launcher.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And a quick shameless plug, my Android app, To Do Text, which you can go to todotxt.com, reached 1.0 this week. So it's available in the Play Store, and I'm awaiting Amazon approval, so it should be in the Amazon App Store as well. Very simple text-based task list. It syncs to Dropbox. You can archive your stuff that you've completed to done.txt now. We added some cool swipe gestures and some syncing bug fixes, so check it out if you haven't already, todotxt.com.
I am going to upgrade right now. How exciting. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And we have new art that looks awesome on the Nexus 7 on the Galaxy Nexus. So we have the extra high DPI icons now. So
Yeah, it looks really nice. Cool.
Thanks.
Allow you access to my Dropbox. That's great. Very nice.
Woohoo! Oh, there it is. Very nice.
Call mom at phone plus familial piece. That's the
example
Tom
task.
Anderson of todo.txt. Everybody gets one item. Call your mother.
Call mom.
Call your mother. Jeff Jarvis, your number of the week.
Well, InMobi, a mobile ad company, has a survey, and take these with a salt shaker. But they insist that mobile web users spend more time watching their phones than watching TV. 144 minutes a day to 141 minutes a day. And other numbers, 96 minutes on a computer, 90 on a radio, 43 reading, and so on. Then other stats. 77% of people confess to using mobile devices in bed. 70% while watching TV, 65% while waiting for something, 43% while with family. Yes, we do. 41% in the bathroom. So finally, we're all out of the closet and in the bathroom, and so on and so on. So just some little stats for you today.
My tool of the week is something I reviewed on the GizWiz, and I've been using it now for about a month, and I love it. Wouldn't it be cool if you could take your Google Voice account and attach it to your phone so that when your phone rings, it's your Google Voice number. It actually rings a phone in your house. This is a little box called the Obi-Hi. It's only $30. It's very inexpensive. They actually have a couple of different Obis. But what happens, and by the way, once it's set up, it does not rely on their server. It uses Google Voice. It does kind of a weird hack, I think, with Google Voice to use Google Chat. But what happens is when somebody calls my Google Voice number now, it rings a phone in my house. I pick it up. I can make phone calls from it, free phone calls to other OB users.
Wait, like a landline? Or?
Yeah. Well, it's like a landline, yes. Except it's not. It's connected to my internet.
Oh, I see. So it
becomes a true VoIP solution that's free because it's using Google Voice.
Oh, sweet.
And it's only $30. There's no monthly fee or anything. The box is very inexpensive. I use the OB100. There's a 110 that gives you, I think, 2 lines. Or actually, I'm sorry, I think it connects to your regular landline, so you can have a single phone that will. So it bridges to your voice service as well as VoIP. So a single phone that answers both numbers. So this is a great way to tie your Google Voice number into your home phone and to make Google Voice calls on an actual, what appears to be a landline. I really like this, and it's inexpensive. OBIHAI.com. Hey, that was fun. Thanks to Dalton Caldwell for joining us on short notice. I hope he didn't screw up his talk tonight, his Airbnb
I'm sure we improved
talk. Yeah. Everybody should go see his Airbnb talk. How about that? We'll sell some tickets for him. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. If you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can go do that. Kevin Marks, TummleVision.tv, as soon as they get a producer.
Yes.
And Salesforce.com. Anything you want to plug?
Well, I suppose the relevant Salesforce thing to plug is Chatter Communities, which we announced yesterday, which is letting you build. So Chatter is the Salesforce internal Twitter, if you like, the thing that lets you talk amongst people who are inside your company. Chatter Communities are ways to extend that to your customers as well. And we announced that yesterday. It's salesforce.com/chatter/communities with the idea that companies can open these kinds of conversations with their customers as well.
Ah, what an interesting idea.
So we're getting towards like lots of these things that will plug together, and I'm hoping that we can get some of these to plug into these other bits as well.
That would be nice. Jeff Jarvis, the author of Public Parts. You must buy the book. He's also a professor of journalism at the City University of New York and blogs at buzzmachine.com. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Thank you to the lovely and talented... By the way, what designer clothes do you wear, Gina Trapani?
Oh, Gap.
I loved it. Did you heard about that, right? Hillary Clinton, some reporter, is talking to our Secretary of State and says, what designers do you like? And she said, would you ask a man that question? Would you ask that? And the reporter said, oh, no,
Also, I missed my chance. Would you ask a man that question, Leo?
I would, in fact, and I wish somebody would ask me because I'm wearing Tommy Bahama today.
Ah, Tommy Bahama.
Gina blogs at smarterware.org, is the author of Think Up at thinkupapp.com, and is, of course, a very welcome and very snappily dressed member of the
with my white T-shirt. Oh yeah.
Team. Here's the Airbnb talks are at airbnb.com/tech talks, and there is still room to sign up for Dalton Caldwell's talk, 6 p.m. San Francisco time. If you're in the San Francisco area, thought I'd give him a little plug for that. Thank you all.
You should ask Anil what designer clothes he wears. That would be much more interesting.
Yes, next time Anil Dash is on.
Anil makes me look really bad all the time. He is always well dressed.
Man.
He's sharp dresser, that one.
Yeah. I like a guy who knows how to wear pointy shoes and look good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. The heels I'm not so sure about. Thank you for joining us. We do the show Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Pacific.
4 p.m. Eastern Time. Sorry, 2100 or 2000 UTC on twit.tv. Please join us live. We love it if you do. But if you can't, we make on-demand versions in audio and video available after the fact at twit.tv/twig or wherever podcasts are offered up. And if you subscribe, do it on iTunes or whatever, you'll get the show every week. And I don't think you want to miss a number. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time on Twig.